Welcome. This is a new cricket podcast that Andrew Samson and myself, Andrew Samson, of course, the doyen of cricket statisticians, internationally known, are putting together just to try and give the four-day game in South Africa a bit of profile. We're both really passionate about the longer form of the game, and we believe there are quite a lot of you out there as well who, you know, really love first-class cricket and the red ball, and long days watching some, at times, thrilling cricket. At the moment, it's a podcast without a name. I thought maybe that quasar cricket, because cricket in South Africa is currently being played pretty much in a black hole. But to you, the listeners, any suggestions for names, you can tweet us, get hold of us on social media, and we'll certainly consider those. And what an opening round of four-day cricket it was, just to get cricket back underway in South Africa after lockdown. Three wonderful games, all of them finishing in results. A host of significant records that we'll chat about. And so a great start to domestic cricket, finally getting back underway in South Africa for the first time since March. We're very privileged to have with us today for our maiden show, Firdose Moonda, CricInfo's illustrious cricket writer. And Firdose was probably at the most exciting game of the weekend, the one between the Cape Cobras and the Titans at Newlands. Hi Firdose, how exciting was it to be there at Newlands, and how happy were you just to watch live cricket again?
Hi Ken, thanks for having me. I was so excited that I forgot that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday is actually days of the week and not a weekend. So we're not even playing cricket at a time when anyone can go and watch, but nobody can go and watch anyway because it's behind closed doors. But it was perfect. Monday's weather was absolutely fabulous. Not a breath of wind, 20-odd, 25, 26 degrees. It was really good to be back at Newlands. Bit of a sight for sore eyes because the construction that you'll remember reduced capacity during the England tests last summer is not complete, and it actually looks like quite something. The building is still being constructed. They've had to test the glass for having balls hit against the glass because that could obviously happen in the future. And there's a lot going on, cranes and noise and quite a few people. In fact, Vinnie Barnes, who was there, was having a little laugh that there's probably never been more people at a first-class game in South Africa because during their lunch break, the construction workers sat in the stand and had a little watch of what was going on. It was really, really great to just see cricket again. It was actually quite a relaxed atmosphere. There were quite a few members of the media. It felt, I want to say, almost normal. And I think definitely the highlight of it. So Lizard Williams started things off really, really well. He's obviously come from the Cape, moved up country. He bowled with such a lot of discipline. I thought he was particularly impressive. And then Dean Elgar's century was really, I guess, the main talking point and the highlight of this match.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal effort, scoring a century out of just a total of 150, which seems an opportune time to bring in Andrew Samson, who has spent lockdown, no doubt, consulting the Oracle, although he is the Oracle, so we're not sure where he's been during lockdown. But Andrew, that innings of Elgar scoring 100 out of a total of just 150, amazing stuff.
Yeah, very impressive. I haven't been anywhere during lockdown. I haven't had a haircut since February. So the main thing I've learned during lockdown is it'll take me probably at least 2.5 years to grow a ponytail. So we've still got a way to go for that. But Dean Elgar, 101 out of 150. It's the fifth lowest total that's included a century in first-class cricket. Clive Rice famously holds the record with 105 not out of 143 for Nottinghamshire against Hampshire in 1981, although that was equalled by Rizwan Malik in Pakistan in 2002. And the other feature of that was, as a percentage of the innings, Dean Elgar's 67.33%, which is the fourth highest in a first-class total in South Africa, all of which have been in the last 5 years, interestingly enough. Obus Pienaar at 74.39%, Southwestern Districts against KZN in 2019 holds that record. And 67.33, of course, just short of the famous Bannerman record. Charles Bannerman still holding the record for the highest percentage of a test total from the very first test match ever He made 165 not out of 245, 165 retired hurt, to be more precise. 67.35, so just above Elgar.
Great stuff, Andrew. Thanks for that. Yeah, for those, I mean, when you see a scorecard sitting up on the half out like that, and you see George Linder take 5 wickets, you kind of think, well, it's obviously turning square in a really deteriorating pitch. And so, you know, when the Titans were set over 300 to win, I thought, well, you know, there's no chance. That's game over. They're going to struggle again in the second innings. But an amazing turnaround, wasn't it, to win that game by 2 wickets, chasing 316?
Yeah, definitely. I think also, look, it wasn't turning that much, is what I will say from what I saw. And I also think that the weather turned a little bit. So we had 2 quite hot days, and now we've had 2 fairly mist days. And so maybe if there were things starting to, or the pitch was starting to crack, or things were starting to wear a little bit, that was halted. But I really want to talk about Tennis de Bruin, who I think has come back from what was really a disappointing last summer, you know, dropped after the series in India. And there was a lot of talk. Would he go Kolpak? Would he commit to staying? What was in this guy's future? And considering that Rassie van der Dussen didn't score that many runs, and Tennis de Bruin pretty much won the game for the Titans with his 100, I'm wondering, you know, how long before we see him push for a place in the Test side. I also just want to say that Dean Elgar, on scoring that 100, was asked about his chances for Test captaincy and gave the most brilliant answer in saying, well, I think it would be one of the most logical things to do in cricket in South Africa, to make me the Test captain. And so he's just laying it out there. You know, none of the other candidates have performed notably this weekend. Timber Bavuma had a tough time. Aiden Markram was out hit wicket in the first innings, and then he scored a 48 in the second. Keshav did well, I suppose. Keshav Maharaj took a 6-fer. But I'm wondering how much Dean Elgar is pushing for that spot.
Yeah, the one thing about Dean Elgar is he's certainly not shy in coming forward, which I think makes him the guy we love so much, and what a wonderful cricketer he is. For those you mentioned, playing behind closed doors at Newlands, which is obviously very sad, and it sounds as if, and I know, you know, quite a few members of the public did sort of ask, can we go and watch the cricket? So I guess the answer is for them to put on blue overalls and pretend to be construction workers, and then they can, you know, quite easily just sneak into Newlands and watch. Not only no spectators allowed, but it was also really difficult for fans around the country to follow the first round of games, wasn't it? Because of no real live scoring, you know, hence cricket in a black hole.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is quite a personal and sore point for me. So, Ken, when I started in cricket, it was as a ball-by-ball scorer and text commentary person for CricInfo at the Wanderers, and that was 16 years ago now. So a really long time, I guess. And I've always known CricInfo and so many cricket-loving fans around the country as being the go-to place. You know, even if all you're seeing is dot ball 4, it's giving you that blow-by-blow. So unfortunately, CricInfo will not be carrying ball-by-ball coverage of the first-class competition because Cricket South Africa have sold those rights to a data company called Opta. And so my understanding of things is that Opta is meant to be providing a similar ball-by-ball service, which will then appear on Cricket South Africa's website. I was told that technical difficulties were the reason that we didn't get that in this first round, but also that there's been a delay in conversations with SuperSport and I think with technicians at Cricket South Africa's website to show a live stream of the first class competition. So, you know, we've only got a few rounds of this competition. It's not like if you miss 1 or 2, we've got ages to make it up. We've already lost 1. I didn't get a definitive answer as to when we might get this live stream. So I'm not sure whether people will be able to see first class cricket in the country, let's say before the end of the year. Obviously, we hope they will. And they must, because that's really the breeding ground for our test cricketers. We haven't had cricket for 7 months. You want to see Dean Elgar scoring 100 and Keshav Maharaj taking a 6-fer. And then somebody you don't know, like the Jacques Snyman, who also scored 100. So I really hope that something changes, because like you say, you know, we're using this word black hole and laughing about it, but it feels like we're in quite a dire situation, and that the coverage of our cricket just needs something.
Yeah, I guess it's heartening that the new interim board has put out a statement very quickly saying that they were looking into this as a matter of urgency. Andrew, of course, as the official statistician for Cricket South Africa, I'm sure this raises some concerns with you, and apparently there were even some errors in the scores of that first weekend. What's your take on this whole issue?
Yeah, well, it's obviously not great that it's difficult to access details of scorecards, and especially the ball-by-ball stuff, which isn't cool anyway. So it doesn't make my life any easier at the moment. And also with CricInfo's scorers were provided by Cricket South Africa, which meant they were in contact with the official scorers. So with Opta doing it, it's slightly more complicated because they're not talking directly to the official scorers, so there's likelihood of official scores being slightly different to the ones that go out on Opta is much higher than it was in the past.
Yeah, I think I was certainly thrown off course by one of the scoreboards, which we'll get to, a record partnership. But Firdose mentioned Jacques Snyman, who got the return to cricket off to a sensational start on the first morning of the first day, playing for the Knights against the Warriors in Bloemfontein, and a very significant achievement that Jacques Snyman had on that first day.
Yeah, Jacques Snyman or Gerrit Snyman, if you looked at the Supersport scorecard. We also had Carl Dollar instead of Junior Dollar, but never mind. Century before lunch, particularly, 71 balls for his century, but century before lunch, and especially a century before lunch on the first day of the game, is pretty rare. Riley was the most recent one in the four-day franchise game when he made that 100 at Centurion. He got 100 before lunch then, and it was the highest before lunch on the first day of a domestic first-class game in South Africa. So talking about the domestic competitions as opposed to tour games. I'll get to that quickly later. Since Lawrence Seif back in 1978-79 got 119 runs before lunch for Western Province B against Natal B. It was you got 109 before lunch to Snyman, which was just one below what Chris Gale got in an extraordinary innings against Easterns on the tour for West Indies in 2003-04. He made 110 before lunch. He was out in the 18th over for 110, which was quite remarkable.
Treating it like a T20 game, the good old universe boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the Knights went on to win that game pretty easily against the Warriors. I think the entire top five of the Knights team passed 50. Great batting display, and then they bowled really well on what must have been a pretty good deck to bowl the Warriors out 158. I think it was in the first innings, and pretty cheaply again in the second innings. So a great start for the Knights. I mean, I actually think that they're a team to really watch this year. They've got some really exciting young players, especially on the batting front, but also that bowling attack. And a guy like Gerald Coetzee was out injured, so that attack could get even stronger. From all accounts, Miguel Pretorius, fast bowler, bowled really well. Imbulele Budaza bowled well. Quality Nixon and Sean van Berg. So I don't know what you guys think about the Knights, but I think they're going to contend strongly this season.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say that I do think that the result may have been different had the Warriors not had to withdraw half their squad on the first day.
Very good point. Yeah.
Players had two of them had positive tests for COVID, and 4 others had come into contact with them. And I actually spoke with the team manager on the day, and they sounded really disappointed because actually what's happened is that you've got 18 people in a squad and they get tested every 2 weeks. So this is something that I don't think the information is really out there. And so once you're tested, those 18 people are the only people you can then pick from. You can't bring in somebody from the outside until the next round of tests 2 weeks later. So if you lose someone in that period, you've just got to take from what you've got. I mean, I don't know what happens if you end up with 18 guys getting COVID, and then I suppose you've got to find a new squad. But they sounded like pretty bummed about having had this happen just as the season started, when other franchises have had cases earlier in the winter and it hasn't affected them to this point. So, I mean, I'm not saying the Warriors would have won the game, but I think having most of their bowling attack out didn't help.
Yeah, really rotten luck for the Warriors. I mean, you can just imagine the the sense of anticipation and the joy amongst the players that they were finally going to get to play and get out there, you know, and do what they love doing. And then, no, sorry, 6 of you can't play. Yeah. Andrew?
Yeah, the new normal, isn't it, with all the COVID regulations coming in. And you have COVID substitutes in the middle of a game as well, like you have concussion substitutes, which obviously you can't argue with the reasons for that, but it does mess up scorecards because, you know, cricket scorecard with 11 players in the game is much easier to deal with in the database than guys coming in and out of the game all the time. So they've had a couple of cases in New Zealand, interestingly, on that in their Plunkett Shield. Although it's not actually players who had COVID, it's players who had symptoms, so they pulled them out the game and waited for them to be tested properly and then put them back in again. So it's not been a good start to the year for statisticians.
Yes, certainly an irritation when you've got sort of 12 and 13 guys playing an 11-a-side game. Sort of takes one back to those really irritating experiments they had in the Nissan Shield.
Yep.
50 overs or 55 overs back then, when they actually had official substitutes playing. And
Barry Lamson famous.
That idea was scrapped.
Sorry. Yeah, it made Barry Lamson famous with the Lamson Lombardo, if you remember that. Some of us are old enough to remember that.
A new star was born. Good old Barry. Yeah. Going to the other game, and this is the one that threw me off a bit because I was looking at the one of the few websites that did have fairly good live scoring was supersport.com, and looking on the scoreboard there, I made the second wicket part. Their scoreboard said the first wicket fell at 8 for 1 in the Dolphins' first innings, but it didn't. Did it, Andrew Samson?
No, well,
on that Dolphins' first innings at Kingsley, quite remarkable.
Well, yeah, it's a bit suspicious when you look at the scorecard and the first wicket's fallen on 8, and the batsman number 2 is out second ball for 2 in 2 minutes. It was actually 1 that the wicket fell at. So the partnership, 344, which interestingly, the Dolphins have actually had a higher second wicket partnership in their franchise history. 344 between Sinner and Mutasamy and Vaughan van Jaarsveld against Knights back in the 2016-17 season, but certainly a very big partnership that. And of course, Saul Yervia, 199. Just the third player, funnily enough, to make 199 in first-class cricket in South Africa. And all of those in the last few years. Dean Elgar in the test match against Bangladesh. And Agat Angelo made 199 not out a few years ago as well. So, okay.
Would that Mutasamy and Vaughan van Jaarsveld partnership, so would that have been at the Oval in Pietermaritzburg? Because I read somewhere that the partnership this week was a Kingsmead record for any week.
Yeah, it probably was a Kingsmead record. I haven't checked that, but it was in Kimberley, unfortunately, not our favourite old ground in Pittsburgh, Ken.
Yeah. Well, the Oval is many other records, I'm sure. So yeah. Look, a convincing win for the Dolphins at Kingsmead, winning by 9 wickets against the defending champions, the Imperial Lions. So an amazing start to the season there. Obviously built around that epic partnership between Cyril Avia and Keegan Peterson. Keegan Peterson, a guy who's been in the Proteas test squad of some really consistent heavy scoring. So his time will probably come soon. But I think Cyril Avia is a guy who's maybe starting to knock on the door, certainly of the SAA side. For those, what do you think of those two guys, Avia and Keegan Peterson?
Yeah, I saw Keegan Peterson doing quite a lot of training with Jacques Callis last summer, and he was getting really personalized attention there. So I was talking about Tennis de Bruin earlier, and I guess Keegan Peterson, Tennis de Bruin, they're kind of competing for that kind of spot, number 3 there and thereabouts, depending on how much longer Faf du Plessis wants to play as well, I suppose. And then I was thinking quite a bit about the opener spot, because we've got a lot of guys who are putting their hand up for that. So there's Peter Malan at the Cobras, obviously Aiden Markram, Dean Elgar, and now Cyril Avia, as well as And Grant Rudolphson had a really good season last season too, so I suppose he's someone we should be talking about as well. And then Reynard van Tonder, who I know was batting 3, but I guess he's up there and thereabouts as well. So there's actually quite an interesting conundrum facing Victor Mpitsang now, isn't there? In that he's got to decide if he makes Dean Elgar captain, then that's one spot taken for the next several years, and then Markram's really got to perform. But if Elgar's not captain and maybe he loses form, and we've seen he's had like 1 or 2 good scores through a summer and then dips off, could both spots be up for grabs? So I think it could be a really interesting summer by the time we get to the Australia tests in February, March next year to see who's nailed those opening spots. We'll look back on these couple of first rounds of the first class competition, and I think we'll find some answers here.
Absolutely, and I guess one other name to throw into the pot who's very highly rated, but maybe hasn't quite piled on the sort of quantity of runs needed to get into the Proteas side is Matthew Beardska of the Warriors. Two good innings in Bloemfontein by him. I mean, apart from the Dolphins batting, which was obviously outstanding, they also bowled really well. Keshav Maharaj getting 6 wickets in the second innings. Othniel Barkman seems to have been a really good signing for the Dolphins. I get a feeling that he might be a little bit of a Glenton Stearman quite guy who was one of the Warriors guys pulled out of their game against the Knights as a new quick bowler who could really go places quite quickly. But Andrew, just to get back to you, it seems like Kingsland is quite a tough place for visiting teams to play at now. They really seem to have mastered the almost subcontinental conditions there. And on the final day, Maharaj and Fenelon Subrayan really just ripping through the lines, which is quite a strong Lions batting lineup.
Yeah, that's right. The 9 wickets between them. Not like the old days when you and I were watching the old Green Top at Kingsmead. Vince van der Ball and Mike Proctor and Kenny Cooper and the like. So yeah, turning square. Well, I don't know if it was turning square. We didn't see much, but obviously much more friendly to the spinners these days. Matthew Beardska, by the way, you mentioned his second innings there.
Yes.
77 not out. He actually carried his bat in the second innings, which is a pretty good effort.
Oh. Okay, I imagine that's something Dean Elgar is probably the last guy to do. When you say carry the bat, you normally think of Elgar.
Yep, well, him and Desmond Haynes, the only 2 players who've carried the bat 3 times in a test innings. So it's not very often that it happens.
No, yeah, it's always a real badge of honor for an opening batsman to do that. Yeah. One of the things I thought which might be quite nice for us to do in this podcast, and obviously for listeners, if you want to send in what you think about this, and whether we absolute idiots who are clearly missing players or we choosing someone who's absolutely hopeless, was to maybe choose an 11 of the round, the sort of 11 best cricketers of the round of first-class cricket that's just been played. I guess we could also reward sort of consistency and do it on a cumulative basis, not just highest run scorer, highest wicket taker of each weekend. But obviously for this round, we've only got 1 round of matches. Not too much to talk about. Andrew, who are the players who really impressed you from the first round of action?
If you're starting to pick an 11, you're looking at openers for a start, and there's 3 who are clear candidates for that, obviously. We're talking about them in the records. Snowman with his 100 before lunch, and Dean Elgar carrying the bats, so they seem like a pretty good opening pair to me. And a classic opening pair. The one guy is going to get the 100 before lunch, and the other guy is still going to be batting when number 11 comes in. Although Beardska also did that, obviously. But and then, of course, Saul Ervia would be in contention there, so I would think you might have to make one of them Ervia, probably the number 3 batsman.
It's funny. I mean, I actually thought Snowman could bat 3. I think he's batted there before. And look, maybe I'm just too conservative, and I kind of a bit scared of having an opening batsman who's just going to blaze it around from ball 1. So I'm almost like, ooh, okay, let's proper openers put on 30 and 15 overs first, And then Jacques, you can come in and create mayhem.
Yeah, that's the kind of way England have finally decided to go. After trying quite a lot of dashes at the top there, none of them really came off with Alistair Cook, and they've gone with Sibley and Burns and the like. It's a good policy, I think, especially when you've got an England team with all the guys who can score runs quickly lower down the order. You can set the platform. So we're going with name number 3.
Yes.
Okay. Number 4.
Well, that's just what I would do.
Yeah,
you're not having Keegan Peterson?
Well,
I would have him in the middle order.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tiernan would be my middle order.
Okay, as long as he's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually a big Keegan Peterson fan. I mean, I remember, it must have been 8 years ago now, watching him play in club champs. For it would have been the Borland team that qualified then. And you could see back then that this guy clearly had something. There was just a dash about him. Just he was such a fluent scorer and a bit flamboyant, but clearly a really good talent. So I'm just extremely happy at how he's progressed. And the other thing I really like about him is that he was a prolific scorer in 3-day cricket, in the provincial sort of semi-professional level.
Yep.
And I always quite like it when you see guys take that step first and like force their way into the franchise team, break down the door, and then they do the same there at franchise level.
I also think we need to have Kyle Verreynne in there. We didn't mention him, but he scored 70 odd, and he could be our wicket keeper if we don't have one already.
Absolutely, I agree wholeheartedly for those. Yeah. And are really crucial in these sort of Cobras at the time, although in the end it was in vain. Yeah. For those, what would your bowling attack look like? Seeing as though you seem fairly happy with our batting order.
Yeah, we got to have Keshav in there. I don't want to leave George Linder out, but now I'm not sure if we have room for 2. I mean, we should actually have Keshav, George Linder, and Tabraiz Shamsi, right? And then we can have one quick bowler. It would have to be Lizard Williams.
Maybe if we're playing at Kingsmead, we could get away with that. Yeah, I had the same debate in my brain, and I'm afraid Keshav, who would still be my first choice Proteas spinner, doesn't make my team of the week, I'm afraid, because I didn't want 2 left-arm spinners. Simple as that. And George Linder obviously bowled really well, and with his batting prowess, he can be the all-rounder in the team. And then I just thought, play 2 spinners, and the other guy you want to be a bit different. Jacques Snyman, of course, can bowl a bit of off-spin as well, so there's a bit of variation there. But then I would have gone to Tabraiz Shamsi, who had a very good game at Newlands, picking up 7 wickets. But for those, I guess looking from afar, he might have got those 7 wickets with long hops and full tosses.
No, he actually bowled really well, did Shamsi. But I saw a couple of his wickets, and I think what was very impressive, number one, he's obviously been training a lot during the off season. So a lot of the guys, so has Dean Elgar, looked a lot leaner than they have in recent times. But then he also bowled with a nice amount of control as well. And I think Shamsi is really pushing for a longer form spot. I think he's really serious about it, just from having spoken to him a little bit as well. So yeah, I'm happy with picking him. How many have we got now? Have we put Lizard Williams in? Because we can't leave him.
Yeah, I think we all agree on Lizard Williams. I think, Andrew, you happy with Lizard, yeah?
Yeah, Lizard.
So 2 more quick.
2 more.
2 more quicks. Sorry, Andrew, who was that?
Going to the quicks. Barton was obviously one of the main candidates, and Pedaza as well.
And Miguel Pretorius.
And Pretorius,
yes. Pretorius apparently bowled really well too. So there's a good spread of young fast.
He's very untransformed, I'm afraid.
Well, look, there are five blacks in the 11, which yes, we will.
We need to work on that.
We will accept an admonishment from the Sports Portfolio Committee on that.
Yeah.
Must do better. Certainly. Yeah. And just on the Tabraiz Shamsi, for those you saying he's looking fitter than ever, I can tell you that the joke in the Titans camp is that Shammer has now installed a gym at his house, basically in his garage, in his double garage, which is so big, this gym, that apparently Shammer is taking subscriptions from people who want to join his gym and go and train with him in his garage in the gym. So he's
an interesting story. I spoke to him just as the lockdown started. He was our first kind of lockdown live feature on Cricinfo, and it was because he just had a baby. And so we wanted to find out like what lockdown life was like.
Had the baby, presumably, otherwise it would have
Fair
been
enough.
Front page news.
Well, we wanted to find out what his life was like with a screaming couple of days old baby, because he also was part of that wave of partners who couldn't go to the hospital when the wife was needing to be in the hospital. So I think that was part of it too. But he had said at the time he had no equipment, and all he was going to do was like run up and down his driveway, and that was kind of his plan, because he thought it was 5 weeks like all the rest of us did. So I'm really interested to hear that he's obviously in the last 7 months he's properly upgraded, and it's showing for sure.
So those, maybe next time you're up on the high path, you and your video camera must go and pay him a surprise visit and get some footage of that gym for us. Yeah. Andrew, closing thoughts. You no doubt delighted to have some first-class cricket to get into.
Yeah, it's been quite a long, lonely winter, I suppose. Talking of exercise during COVID, I've walked around my house 9,250 times so far. We're gonna stop when we get to 10,000. So I've actually lost a bit of weight during it, like most people. But yeah,
you put it on your beard, though, Andrew. I think that's quite you really are a bit of a bearded wonder now.
I don't know about the wonder, but far too bearded, yes. Yeah, very good round of games, very enjoyable. Obviously, not for those of us not watching directly, but certainly a lot of good cricket played. And of course, it's always good when there's nice stats to talk about.
For sure, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to doing what Firdose did, last weekend, and actually going to live cricket and watching it. I'll be at the Wanderers from Monday. The Lions are hosting the Cobras, I believe. That's right, yeah. And the Titans are in Port Elizabeth playing the Warriors, which leaves the Knights to play the Dolphins, which I think would be a really, really interesting game between two early pace hitters. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our maiden cricket podcast without a name, Quasar Cricket or Cricket in the Black Hole, or any other suggestions that you, our wonderful listeners, can come up with. We'd be delighted to hear from you on social media. And also, if you have any comments or questions or anything you'd like us to discuss, please get hold of us. But Andrew, thank you very much. The Oracle, always fascinating what you bring to the cricket discussion, and lovely to have the expert views of Firdose Moonda as well in Cape Town. Thanks very much for those. And until next time, we look forward to chatting to you about the second round of CSA 4-day domestic series matches. See you then.